sometimes I'm a bit too ambitious, in particular in the beginning. I said, okay, we can realize things within 20 or 30 minutes, and then it turns out it always took more time. And so that would be that's my learning, and I would like to share this with all the other colleagues, that you really take time, that in realizing things, that you need buffers, and that sometimes it takes more time, that people start to work with each other. Sometimes they just need some breaks to relax. And in particular, if you send them in breakout sessions in a Zoom environment, for example, an excellent way to assign people to groups, by the way, but it takes its time, from when you send somebody in a room until people really start working. And I tend to underestimate these periods of time, and that later a challenge, because then after 10 or 15 minutes the people come back with no or just scarce ideas what they want to do, and that should of course not happen. So because then they are losing the flow, and then they don't get the idea, why should I apply that kind of methodology, in particular when they're not used to the methodology. So in a masterclass of designers, I think these kind of people, they can cope with it. But if you would like to apply that methodology, let's say in a class of the engineers in the second years, and they're applying it for their very, very first time, that could be frustrating for the students.
I personally prefer, when you want to like teach creativity or motivate creative thinking, then I often prefer to have some kind of hands-on experience, and also like maybe directly with students, so that we can try things, tinkering and think with your hands. And that is, I would say, it's somewhat difficult in the situation. You miss some of the, you can say, details in the discussion. I mean, when you can comment on what you see directly, and so on. You can maybe comment more on the discussion that the students are having, and so on, when they try to come up with ideas or solutions on the problem they're working on. That's the main challenge, as I see it, because you have this kind of indirect contact.
Yeah, the biggest challenge I've seen is the thing that when 5 people are together and they can look in their eyes, you can create this synergy where 2 people come up with something they didn't think of themselves. So they had it in them, but it only came up because they were together, so to speak. When you want to do that online, it poses some challenging on the technical equipment in how can they communicate online. Of course, they can speak to each other, but there's some limits because we can't use all our senses. We're actually limited to mostly using our ears, yes, and our eyes, but the whole body we can't really use.
Well, of course, not being able to see the student's face is hard. You cannot tell if they are with you or if they are bored or even sleepy. But when I feel like I'm losing interest, I try to come up with personal questions to engage the student. And I believe putting little quizzes or short Q&A sessions quite often during the course of the class helps their interconnection.
I'm spending more time while preparing my lectures, and I'm spending many hours to search, especially one specific video for the lecture, because sometimes you just need to concentrate and you just need to find this specific video. And if you want to change the method of the creativity, I need to search and find the real method, which is convenient for my lecture. And sometimes you couldn't really get what you give. Because at online teaching, you couldn't understand the students' real feelings due to the lack of the face-to-face contacts and eye contact, of course.
Not being able to make, eye contact, sometimes physical contact with the students, the dialogues are not that impactful for us. So I think the most challenging thing is the eye contact.
Yeah, so having your tools ready, because what you find with creativity, for example, those post-it boards, you more or less put up little green and white post-its, and that's really useful. But how do you embed that in to maybe the teaching platform, kind of in a live session? So sometimes that can be a little bit time consuming just to set up. What you find as well with creativity and the tools to support it it's not one technology, it is several. So that can sometimes be very daunting for a student because they're trying to kind of get to grips with, for example, Adobe Connect or Microsoft Teams and the teaching platform there. They're using different ones for different lectures, depending on what suits the teaching style. But now you're bringing in, kind of storyboard technologies with it. You're bringing in all these other virtual creativity tools that are there, and it can become quite daunting for them because they're not using this on a day-to-day basis. So that in itself can kind of be, I think, one of the key challenges. The other one as well is that when you're in a room, for example, if we compare that face-to-face, you can spot somebody who's naturally shy, who kind of maybe withdraws back, and there are behaviors that you can adopt yourself to kind of facilitate bringing them into the fore a little bit more, getting their opinion on things. When it's virtual and it's online, the type of quiet person or shy person, they can be even more in the background, and it is, without kind of embarrassing and that, it's very difficult to actually call them out to make them participate in a way that doesn't feel like you're harassing them in some way. So that sometimes can be certainly a challenge.
And I think one of the most challenging things is perhaps where you're giving a one-off session with groups and the trust maybe with you and them isn't there as opposed to within the team. And they disengage. So there's no camera on, there's no mic on, or you're in a classroom, an online environment where that's the norm from the lecturer's perspective, because maybe they're covering a big group session of content, and it's a very theoretical facing module, and you're maybe invited in to deliver something on creativity, but you don't fit the context that the students have been trained in so far, and you're kind of parachuted in and maybe, it isn't what you're used to. So for me, I think it has been the case where, there's been one-off lectures. It's only happened to me once, but I still remember it, that it was hugely challenging because the environment was cameras off, chat off, mics off for this particular cohort.
Ich denke, die größte Herausforderung ist die Motivation. Und ich glaube auch, es gibt ja jetzt schon auch Wege, wie man das gut hinbekommt, aber ich glaube, da muss man auch noch viel mehr machen, wirklich die Leute von Anfang an abzuholen, zu motivieren. Gerade, also Sie kennen das vielleicht auch als Studierende, wenn Sie in der Lehre sind, man sitzt vor diesem Bildschirm, man hat manchmal auch irgendwie eine schwarze Wand, also wenn manche die Kameras ausmachen. Ich finde, es ist viel schwieriger, die Leute von Anfang an am Ball zu halten und bis zum Ende auch zu motivieren. Über eben so virtuelle Online-Lehre als jetzt vor Ort, weil man doch in einem physischen Raum auch den Raum hat, der etwas mit einem macht. Man hat tatsächlich den Moderator und die anderen Teilnehmer live vor Ort. Gestik, Mimik wird ganz anders wahrgenommen, die Aura eines Menschen wird ganz anders wahrgenommen, und ich finde, dass dieser Motivationspunkt bei Lehre im physischen Raum besser umsetzbar ist als aktuell in der Online-Lehre, und da müsste man noch mehr machen, auf jeden Fall.
Also was ich immer wieder erlebe, ist, dass wenn Methoden eingesetzt werden, dass es Leute gibt, die finden bestimmte Methoden ganz wunderbar und ganz toll, und andere können damit gar nichts anfangen. Und deshalb ist es wichtig, so ein Methodenspektrum zu haben, dass man nicht eine allein selig machende Methode vertritt und denkt, da hängt alles dran, sondern dass man die Vielfalt hat. Und wenn man merkt, die Methode, mit der komme ich jetzt nicht weiter, wie mit dem Brainwriting oder mit der Disney-Methode, dann nehme ich halt eine andere Methode und bin da flexibel. Das ist wichtig. Und ich habe wirklich auch immer wieder erlebt, dass es Methoden gibt, wo manche Teilnehmer sagen, super, toll, perfekt, ich brauche nichts anderes mehr, und andere konnten damit gar nichts anfangen. Und das ist vollkommen in Ordnung. Wir sind halt sehr verschieden. Und manche sind so visuell orientiert, die malen gerne, die machen Wissenslandkarten und andere Sachen. Andere, die versuchen erstmal zu strukturieren. Da ist so ein Brainwriting zum Beispiel hilfreich. Und dann gibt es Leute, die wollen sich an einer Sache festhalten. Für die ist Design Thinking jetzt nicht unbedingt so optimal, weil es ja doch sehr viel Wahrheit braucht, bis ich wirklich dann ein Ergebnis habe. Also es hängt auch von den Persönlichkeiten ab. Aber deshalb haben wir ja die Vielfalt, und deshalb gibt es auch vielfältige Möglichkeiten, die eigene Kreativität weiterzuentwickeln. Das ist schon auch was ganz Individuelles. Wichtig ist nur, dass Menschen wirklich von Natur aus kreativ sind, wie ich schon sagte, und dass es das nicht gibt, dass Menschen unkreativ sind. Oft wird es uns ausgetrieben, in der Schule zum Beispiel. Aber wenn wir das zulassen, dann kann sich da ganz viel entwickeln.